The sirens didn't even get a full cycle out before the sky ripped open. Kael Draven dropped his cutting torch the second the mining rig's seismic alarms bled into the air. They were deep in the red sector, underground, noisy, out of the loop. That meant when the emergency feed crackled to life in his helmet, all he caught was static, screaming, and a single phrase. Inbound, non-human. Evac too late. The ground trembled. He looked up. The mine shaft's ceiling groaned, then cracked like thin ice. Light, burning blue and violent, poured through as the drill platform above was blown apart. Debris rained down like shrapnel. Kael grabbed the nearest rookie miner, shoved him behind a support beam, and covered his own head with trembling arms. Welcome to Eltarion, he thought. Population, screwed. The outpost was never meant to handle a military assault. Built for profit, not protection. No shields. No perimeter defense grid. Just a dome, some drones, and a workforce of civilians paid to strip Nyxite out of the planet's crust until their lungs gave out. Kael staggered through smoke and ash toward the central colony. What used to be the mess hall was now a flaming crater. Half of Block C was gone, melted like plastic under a blowtorch. Bodies littered the streets, burnt black, fused to the ground. Some still twitched. Above, the sky shimmered with a foreign glow, metallic and pulsing like it was alive. The Zevrak ships weren't just vessels. They were things, breathing, writhing constructs that moved like predators in low orbit. One of them screamed, a low howl that rattled the fillings in Kael's teeth. He'd seen death in the service. Piracy, border skirmishes, even a brush with a rogue AI fleet off Saturn. But this wasn't war. This was extermination. Draven, a voice rasped. Kael turned, rifle up, but it wasn't a threat. Nyra Voss was limping toward him, blood streaking her temple, a pistol in one hand and a steel case in the other. Her usual cocky smuggler's grin was gone. Now just tight lips and tired eyes. We need to get underground. There's more coming. He nodded, falling in beside her. Command's gone? Command never showed up. Whatever this is, it wasn't meant to start a fight. It was a goddamn message. A sharp whine cut through the air. One of the Zevrak drones, black carapace, 10 limbs, no eyes, dropped from the sky like a spider wrapped in napalm. It hit the street 20 meters away, and immediately split apart into 5 mechanical serpents, each slithering toward any heat source they could find. Nyra fired. So did Kael. The rounds tore into the closest drone snake, sparking metal and fluid into the air, but 2 others darted toward a collapsed structure where a child's cry echoed. Kael didn't think. He ran. 1 leap, 1 tackle, and he was shielding the kid with his own body as the serpent wrapped around his back, clawing, stabbing. Pain flared white. He jammed his pistol backward and fired until the thing dropped dead beside him, twitching. Kid's alive, he grunted, hauling them both up. Nyra pulled them into an alley, shot the last drone through the head, and motioned toward a maintenance hatch. Bunkers still sealed. You think the old shafts are clear? Kael shrugged. Only one way to find out. They made it underground with a handful of survivors. 20, maybe 30. Most were shell-shocked, soot-faced, bleeding. There were no doctors. No med bays. Just a dark maintenance tunnel running beneath the colony, a leftover from the first mining cycle years ago. Kael slammed the hatch shut behind them and sealed it with an arc weld. He took a long breath and slumped against the cold wall. Nyra dropped the steel case on a crate. It hissed open, revealing a cracked data pad, charred and half-fused, but still glowing. Zevrak script scrolled across it. Found this in one of their drop pods, she muttered. They weren't here for the Nyxite. Not even the colony. They were here to record. Record what? Our deaths. The whole damn thing. Live streamed across half the quadrant. They wanted us to know they're back. Kael didn't speak. He watched the survivors, young miners, technicians, 2 kids, huddling in fear, clutching tools like weapons. None of them were soldiers. Hell, he barely was anymore. Nyra sat beside him. You think Earth'll believe us? He let out a bitter laugh. Doesn't matter. If they don't, they'll get a show of their own soon enough. A silence fell between them. In the dark, the air was heavy with burnt ozone and blood. Somewhere above, the Zevrak sang again, low, droning like a death knell stretched across the sky. Later, while the others rested, Kael pulled out an old comm unit, jury-rigged to an uplink beacon hidden in the mines. He wasn't even sure it would reach the nearest relay station. But he tried anyway. This is Kael Draven of Outpost Eltarion. We've been attacked. Civilians down. Entire sectors compromised. He paused. His voice cracked and he had to swallow before continuing. They weren't here to invade. They were here to send a message. The Zevrak are back. And we're not ready. He clicked off the comm, eyes dull, heart numb. Behind him, Nyra lit a cigarette with shaky hands, smoke curling in the stale air. You think anyone's listening? She asked. Kael looked up at the ceiling. The metal above trembled, faintly, like it was breathing. I think, he said slowly, we just became the start of something. The freighter stank of fuel, sweat, and half-cooked protein rations. Kael Draven sat against the cold hull, arms crossed, watching the stars slide by through the cracked viewport. The mining crew turned refugees, 32 survivors now, were crammed into the hold like cargo. Nyra's ship, the Shrike, had been built for speed, not passengers. Every jolt through hyperspace sounded like a death rattle. Engines holding, Nyra said, climbing down from the cockpit ladder, wiping grease on her already filthy pants. I had to bypass the core regulators with scrap from a food processor, but hey, we're not dead. Kael didn't smile. Yet. She tossed him a water pack. Ever the optimist. He drank, then leaned back. Where are we headed? Calder's Reach. Nearest relay with a functioning comm net. Assuming they haven't been hit too. Calder's Reach was a floating slum orbiting a dead gas giant. Not exactly paradise, but better than getting atomized by alien tech. I've got a contact there, she added. Smuggler, name's Byron Coe. Owes me for a job I didn't sell him out on. He can get us a signal to EarthGov command. Kael nodded, jaw tight. He hadn't slept in 40 hours. The screams from Eltarion kept replaying every time he closed his eyes. The docking clamps at Calder's Reach were rusted and slow, but they held. Kael and Nyra disembarked with a small group while the others stayed aboard. Calder's main concourse was chaos. Merchants yelling over the din, beggars and rebreathers panhandling for creds, and mercenaries watching from the shadows. The station reeked of rust, oil, and desperation. Feels like home, Nyra muttered. Stay close. They found Coe in a gambling den with flickering neon and broken AC. He was older than Kael expected, with cybernetic arms and a grin that screamed backstabber. He didn't bother to get up when they approached. You brought hell to my door, Nyra? You owe me, she said, dropping the Zevrak datapad on the table. Kao's grin faltered as the glyphs scrolled across the screen. I thought they were dead. So did we, Kael said. This footage goes out, people start listening. Coe stared at the feed, drones dismembering civilians, burning Nyxite veins, and that bone-chilling broadcast from the Eldreth Queen, you will kneel or you will burn. All right, Coe muttered. Let's make some noise. 2 hours later, every public channel in the quadrant lit up with raw footage of the Eltarion massacre. The net exploded. People screamed. Politicians denied. News feeds went into lockdown. EarthGov immediately flagged the transmission as unauthorized fear propaganda, then quietly ordered an investigation. But it was too late. In backwater systems and forgotten colonies, the fire had already caught. Mercenary bands pledged support. Outlaw AI fleets began sharing encryption keys. Even a few deep space stations long assumed silence sent 3 words back to the Shrike. We saw it. Kael sat in the Shrike's cockpit, staring at the message logs. They're listening, he said. Nyra leaned over his shoulder. They're scared. He nodded. Good. Now we need something to fight with. EarthGov was dragging its feet. Official response, awaiting confirmation, situation under review. They wouldn't act until the threat came knocking on Luna's door, and by then it'd be too late. So Kael and Nyra did what Earth wouldn't. They formed the Vanguard Accord. It started as a whisper, fringe militias, rogue AI warships, junkyard fleets. But Kael knew how to rally soldiers. He'd done it before during the rogue terraform wars. And Nyra? She knew how to find the ones hiding in the shadows. They made a hell of a team. Within a week, 8 factions had signed on. 2 colony governors pledged supply chains. A Martian weapons dealer sent them a shipment of retrofitted plasma rifles. No charge. But the Real win came from the Scylla, an AI warship that had gone dark 20 years ago. Its core intelligence, Helix, sent a signal offering tactical support and strategic oversight in exchange for nothing. I want the Zevrak gone, Helix said, voice cold and metallic. What they did on Eltarion is only the beginning. The Shrike was now a command ship, jury-rigged with encrypted relays and war maps. In the middle of a strategy session, Nyra slammed a new data chip on the table. Got this off the Zevrak drone I killed on Eltarion, she said. Encrypted 6 ways to hell, but Helix cracked it. Kael plugged it in. The hologram that appeared was a map. Not of the galaxy. Not of a planet. Of Eltarion's underground. Marked in glowing red, A chamber beneath the collapsed mines. Something hidden. Something old. What the hell is that? Kael asked. Helix chimed in. It is not Zevrak tech. It predates their empire by several millennia. Nyra crossed her arms. Then why were they so keen on turning the place into a bonfire? Kael stared at the glowing point. Because whatever it is, they didn't want us to find it. They returned to Eltarion under cover of a magnetic storm, slipping past Zevrak patrols with Helix jamming signals. The planet was still burning. The air was toxic. The ground was unstable. The colony was gone, flattened into ash and glass. But the mines were intact, just deep enough to have survived orbital bombardment. Kael, Nyra, and a strike team of 6 crept through the tunnels like rats, Geiger counters ticking, weapons hot. They found the chamber 3 kilometers down, behind a collapsed shaft wall. Nyra placed a charge. The explosion echoed through stone and steel. And there it was. A spherical vault, obsidian black, humming with low, alien energy. Floating in the center, a crystalline core pulsing with psychic resonance. Helix's voice echoed in their comms. This is not human. Not Zevrak. This is from the old galaxy. The Nyxite Core. Kael stepped forward, drawn to it. His fingers touched the surface, and visions slammed into his brain. Planets burning. Stars dying. Zevrak queens screaming in rage. And a whisper. Weapon. They barely escaped. Zevrak drones swarmed the tunnels within minutes, but Kael held the core and the core responded. With a single pulse of light, it shorted the drones out, like flicking off a hive of mechanical insects. Back aboard the Shrike, Kael sat in silence, the core in his lap. Nyra leaned against the doorframe. You okay? No, he said. But I know what this is. She raised an eyebrow. A way to kill a god. Kael hadn't slept in days and the core didn't let him forget it. Even wrapped in radiation dampeners and stashed in a shielded chamber aboard the Shrike, it still whispered. Not in words. Not exactly. More like feelings, flashes of memories that weren't his. Fear. Fire. Rage. Power. Every time Kael got near it, it reached into his mind like a cold hand pulling him under. It was getting stronger. Helix said the core was responding to proximity, to Kael himself. We're bonded, Kael muttered, staring at it through the observation window. Like hell you are, Nyra said from behind, arms folded. You're not keeping that thing in your bunk like it's a pet. Kael turned, eyes sunken. It's not a pet. It's a goddamn relic from the galaxy's prehistory and for some reason, it chose me. Nyra wasn't laughing. We don't know what it is, Kael. We don't know what it wants. Or what the hell the Zevrak were trying to bury. He stepped toward her, voice low. They weren't trying to bury it. They were trying to keep it hidden. Not from us. From something worse. The Vanguard fleet had grown. 27 ships now. Mostly junkers, retrofitted freighters, and outdated war cruisers. A ragged armada held together by desperation and duct tape. But they had numbers. And momentum. The loss of Eltarion had stirred something in the outer systems. An anger that refused to die quietly. The broadcast from the colony had gone viral on shadow networks. The Zevrak were no longer a myth. They were death incarnate and people were lining up to hit back. But they needed more than outrage. They needed understanding. So Kael called in a specialist. Her name was Dr. Elira Chen. Xenolinguist. Fringe archaeologist. Banned from EarthGov academic circles for publishing unsubstantiated alien weapon theories. Helix tracked her to a derelict orbital lab near Sirius. She arrived in a shuttle held together with tape and hope, stepping off with a tablet, 2 drones, and 0 patients. Where is it? She asked, pushing past Kael like he didn't exist. He took her to the core. She stopped in front of the glass, pupils dilating. Oh, my gods. You actually found one. One what? Kael asked. A riven core, she whispered. The ancients used them as anchors, conduits to an artificial neural weapon. Something so vast, so powerful it could target thoughts, beliefs, entire cultures. Kael frowned. That sounds like science fiction. Elira turned to him, deadly serious. It's worse. It's history. According to her research, long before the Zevrak rose to power, there was another war. One fought not just with weapons but with ideas. Civilization after civilization wiped out by the Riven network, each core acting as a beacon, amplifying the psychic resonance of whoever held it. A single individual, properly bonded, could destroy a hive-mind, Elira said, looking at Kael. Nyra looked between them. You're saying Kael's supposed to mind bomb the Zevrak? Not yet, Elira said. The core's dormant. It needs something to awaken it fully, an interface, maybe a trigger system. Something still buried. Buried where? She pointed to the map pulled from the drone. Eltarion has deeper vaults. The chamber you found? That was just the outer shell. Kael felt the chill run through him. We have to go back. The return to Eltarion was worse than the first. The atmosphere was nearly unbreathable now. Zevrak bioweapons had turned the upper winds into acidic clouds that chewed through hull plating like termites. Only 2 ships in the vanguard could survive the descent. Kael took one. Nyra insisted on the other. They landed in what was left of the southern ridge, where a forgotten shaft, marked only by an ancient symbol, opened like a wound in the earth. Kael descended first. The shaft was tight, barely wide enough for a person in armor. The deeper they went, the colder it got, not physically but psychically. Like the core's presence was warping reality around it. Elira's scanners were shorting out. Helix, piped in through comms, started glitching mid-sentence. I do not trust this system. There are echoes, not human. At the bottom, the path widened into a vast underground hall, lined with black stone that shimmered with bioluminescent veins. Nyra swept a light across the walls. Looks like circuitry. Living circuitry, Elira said. This whole vault is part of it. We're standing inside the weapon. At the center of the hall was a pedestal, long dead and dormant. As Kael approached, the core in his hands began to glow, soft at first, then searing. Kael, wait, Nyra called. Too late. The core lifted from his hands and slammed into the pedestal with a deafening boom. Light exploded outward in a blinding sphere, knocking everyone to the ground. When Kael opened his eyes, he was somewhere else. Not physically. Psychically. He was standing on a ruined world, skies black, oceans burning, cities cracked open like skulls. Figures surrounded him, humanoid but not. Warriors, priests, something in between. They stared at him silently. Then a voice, one voice speaking through all of them. You have awakened what was forgotten. The Zevrak will come. And you are the last weapon. Kael gasped as he returned to the vault. His hands shook. His eyes bled. The core pulsed and the walls of the vault began to sing, a deep resonance that echoed into the bones of the planet. Above them, in orbit, Zevrak ships changed course. They were coming. Back aboard the Shrike, Kael collapsed into a chair, blood still dripping from his ears. Helix had gone dark. Nyra was piloting solo, and Elira was furiously documenting every second. Kael stared out at the stars, core in his lap, still glowing. They know, he whispered. Nyra glanced over. What? They know we've activated it. We poked the hive. She sat beside him, quiet for a long time. Then she lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly. So now what? Kael clenched his fists. Now we don't run. Now we hit back. The Vanguard fleet drifted in low orbit over the shattered moon of Tyrvale, a no-man's land forgotten by most star charts. It was the only place left quiet enough to breathe. And even here the fractures were showing. Inside the Shrike's war room, Kael stood surrounded by holograms, leaders, captains, warlords, and opportunists. Each flickering image argued louder than the last. You're talking about marching into Zevrak space with a single weapon we don't understand. Half my fleet is duct-taped together and held by hope. We can't take another engagement. We should surrender while we have leverage. Offer the core in exchange for amnesty. Kael's jaw clenched. Nyra leaned on the corner of the table, arms crossed. So we hand over the one thing that scares them? They fear it, snapped a grizzled Martian militia leader. And fear makes enemies stupid. We could use that. We've been using fear our whole lives, Kael said coldly. Didn't stop Eltarion from burning. Silence fell like a guillotine. The name still carried ash. Helix's voice crackled through the speakers, slower than usual, corrupted by the psychic aftershocks of the core. The Zevrak are moving. 5 dread carriers en route. Estimated time to contact, 11 cycles. They're coming to finish the job, Kael said. No one argued that. Later, Kael sat in the Shrike's cargo bay, where the core floated in a containment field, humming like a haunted heart. He didn't like how familiar it felt now, how it pulsed in time with his thoughts. Nyra joined him, holding 2 glasses of bootleg brandy. She handed him one. Thought you could use something not made of pain and existential dread. Kael drank. Thanks. They sat in silence. You okay? She asked. He looked at her, eyes sunken. I haven't been okay since the mines. She nodded, then leaned back against the bulkhead. We've got traitors. Kael raised an eyebrow. Your Martian friend? Commander Vesh. He's been transmitting encrypted pings to someone outside the Accord. One of KO's slicers picked it up. Kael didn't say anything for a long time. Then, he wants to sell us out. Sell you out, she said. Specifically. He's calling you a liability. Says you've bonded with a dangerous artifact of unknown influence. He's not wrong technically. Kael stared at the core. He's going to try to take it. Not just take it. Trade it. The betrayal came faster than expected. Vesh's cruiser, the Hammerfall, powered weapons during a fleet resync. He broadcast an ultimatum. Kael Draven is compromised. The core is not a salvation, it is a trigger for genocide. Stand down or be marked as zealots. 3 smaller ships veered into formation behind him. Allied. Kael stood on the command deck of the Shrike, jaw tight. Nyra flipped up a safety cover on the ship's railgun. They're bluffing, she said. No, Kael replied. They think they're saving lives. Across the bridge, Helix's voice returned, stronger now. Core telemetry indicates high resonance. Any attempt to remove Kael from proximity may trigger psychic cascade. Nyra blinked. In English. Kael answered. If they try to take it, it kills everyone. Neat, she muttered. The standoff lasted 16 minutes. Kael opened a channel. You want to remove me, Commander? Come do it in person. Vesh didn't respond. He didn't need to. The Hammerfall launched boarding pods. Helix, Kael said, vent atmosphere in docking bay 4. Set targeting locks on the Hammerfall's engines. You can't be serious, Nyra muttered. I'm tired of being serious. The pods breached. 2 were instantly shredded by autocannons. The 3rd made it through. Vesh's men, 6 in powered armor, hit the deck running. Kael met them with plasma fire and the core humming at his back. The fight was fast and brutal. Tight corridors, screaming metal, one of Nyra's mines turning a hallway into red mist. Kael didn't fight like a soldier anymore. He fought like something possessed. When the last invader fell, Kael stood over the wreckage, blood on his face, his eyes glowing faint blue. The core pulsed. The other fleets backed off. Even Vesh. Later Vesh called again. I won't fight you, Draven. But I won't follow you either. Kael nodded. Fair. Then he cut the channel. Half the fleet fractured that day. 9 ships left. 3 disabled. 1 self-destructed, refusing to let the core fall into mad hands. What remained? The loyal. The desperate. The ones with nothing to lose. Vanguard was smaller now but sharper. That night, Kael stood in his quarters, staring at himself in the mirror. He looked like a ghost wearing a dead man's face. Nyra entered quietly. She didn't speak at first. You scared them, she said finally. I scare myself. The core's changing you. I know. She stepped closer. You still you in there? Kael didn't answer. After a moment she left. In the quiet, Helix's voice returned, softer this time. I have seen this before. In the wars of the old galaxy. Kael stared at the dark ceiling. What happened to the last guy with the core? Helix hesitated. He won. Kael closed his eyes. Then whispered, at what cost? The Zevrak homeworld wasn't a planet. It was a wound in space. Kael stood on the Shrike's bridge, staring at it through the viewport, a monstrous biomechanical sphere wrapped around a dying star. The Dominion didn't just live there. They were it. Flesh fused with metal, spires twisted with bone, orbiting a sun they'd long since drained of light. The system had no name in any human archive. Helix spoke through the ship's AI core, its voice low. Designation, Hive Prime. Origin, unknown. Defensive grid, active. Probability of survival, 8%. Nyra leaned on the console, her fingers tapping a jittery rhythm. That's oddly optimistic for you. Kael didn't respond. He couldn't tear his eyes away. The core pulsed beside him, caged in a containment field that barely held. Since leaving Tyrvale, its hum had turned into something deeper, more constant. Like it was alive. Like it was listening. This is it, Kael said quietly. End of the line. The plan was suicide. The Vanguard fleet, what remained of it, would draw the Zevrak's outer defense away in a diversion, striking fuel tendrils and communication spires. Meanwhile, the Shrike, retrofitted with a cloaking shell made from stolen Zevrak biotech, would sneak in close. Then Kael would enter the core's broadcast range and do what the weapon was made for: sever the hive-mind. It sounded simple. It wasn't. The fleet hit first. 32 ships burned across the void, launching everything they had. The Dominion responded like a kicked nest. Leviathan dreadships screamed out of the hive's surface, their hulls rippling with nerve tissue and spines. Missile swarms met venom cannons in a ballet of annihilation. Every second, a vanguard ship died. Inside the Shrike, Kael felt every explosion like a blow to the chest. "We're in," Helix said. Cloak holding. Approach vector locked. Nyra piloted manually now, eyes bloodshot, jaw set. Elira Chin stood behind them, whispering data streams to herself, transfixed by the growing psychic pressure. Even Helix seemed strained, the ship's lights flickered like a brain on the edge of a seizure. "Atmosphere's changing," Elira muttered. "Cores entering pre-activation." Kael gripped the support rail. His hands were shaking. He could feel the Queen. Not as a presence but as a whole. A vast emptiness at the center of the hive, pulling at his thoughts like gravity. No malice. No hate. Just need. A hunger to control. "We're almost there," Nyra said. 2 clicks from the breach point. Then the cloak failed. The hive felt them. Tendrils erupted from the surface, organic and mechanical, tearing toward the Shrike like blood-seeking lances. Nyra dove, barely avoiding a collision. One tentacle scraped the hull, shredding armor. Kael was already moving. The core, no longer waiting, floated from its cradle and locked into his chest harness like it belonged there. It burned. Pain unlike anything he'd felt shot through his spine, his eyes, his soul. His thoughts weren't his anymore. They were vast. Ancient. Screaming. "Kael?" Nyra shouted. He collapsed to his knees, but rose again, slower this time. "Change. We go in now," he said, voice hollow and electric. Elira stared at him. "You're not Kael anymore, are you?" "Not just." They breached the hive's outer shell in a stolen Zevrak drop pod. The surface cracked open before them like a breathing wound. Inside, a cathedral of horror. Bone towers. Living cables. Rows of dormant drones floating in nutrient gel. The walls pulsed with life, heartbeats layered in sound. And at the center, a spiral descent into the Queen's chamber. Kael led them. As they moved deeper, Zevrak soldiers awoke. Tall. Insectoid. Telepathic. But none attacked. They parted like waves before Kael, chittering softly, confused. One reached out to touch him, and disintegrated the moment it made contact with the core. "The link's failing," Elira whispered. "You're erasing her grip." "No," Kael said. "She's pulling back. Waiting. Waiting for him." The chamber was vast. Hollow. Quiet. In its center stood the Eldreth Queen. Tall. Pale. Regal. Her body fused with the hive itself, her mind stretched across every drone, every ship, every scream ever sung by the Zevrak. Her eyes were black stars. Her voice was not sound but thought. "You are not one. You are many. You are pain." Kael stepped forward. The core crackled with impossible energy. "You murdered my people. We preserved yours, for centuries. Guided. Watched. Now you choose to burn. You started this war," Kael growled. "We reminded you of your place." The core flared. And Kael unleashed it. The psychic detonation was silent, but total. A pulse of thought, light, and memory slammed outward, severing the Queen's mind from her hive. Drones collapsed. Ships drifted pilotless. The hive itself screamed, folding in on itself as its consciousness bled into the void. Kael staggered, blood pouring from his nose, ears, eyes. The Queen shrieked, not aloud but into every molecule of the chamber. "You cannot win. You are only a moment." Kael stared back, broken but standing. "Then let this moment burn." Nyra pulled him out as the hive began to collapse. Behind them, Elira activated a self-destruct signal built into the pod. A parting gift from Helix. They launched from the crumbling throne just as the core, now free of Kael's grasp, detonated inside the Queen's dying mind. A light brighter than any star. And then silence. They were picked up 2 hours later by a battered Vanguard freighter. The hive was gone. The Zevrak fleets drifted, inert. Without the Queen they had no will, no command. The war, such as it was, ended with a breath. Kael lay unconscious in the medbay, his vitals erratic. The core had vanished, burned out, or taken with the Queen. No one knew. Nyra sat beside him, staring at the ceiling. "You did it," she whispered. "You crazy, stubborn bastard." She reached for his hand and this time he squeezed back. The war didn't end with a bang. It ended with silence. Across the galaxy, Zevrak ships floated like tombs, hollow, powerless, directionless. Without the Queen's mind tethering them, they were blind machines, waiting for orders that would never come. And still no one celebrated. because the price hadn't finished being counted. Kael Draven awoke in a medbay aboard the Shrike. Dim lights. Soft beeping. Pain in every joint like someone had sandblasted his bones. Nyra sat beside him, her boots kicked up on the console. She looked like hell, eyes ringed with exhaustion, arm in a sling, half her ribs wrapped in synth bandage. She noticed his eyes flicker open and gave him a weak smile. Took you long enough. Kael tried to speak. Nothing came out but air. Nyra held up a cup. Here. Water first, heroic speech later. He drank slow. The liquid tasted metallic. Real water was still hard to come by. Is it over? He croaked. She nodded. Yeah. You did it. He blinked slowly. The core? Gone. Burned itself out after it shattered her mind. Some people think it merged with the hive. Others think it ascended or something. She shrugged. Whatever it was, it's not coming back. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. Good. 2 weeks later they landed on Eltarion. Or what was left of it. The colony site was a crater. Black glass and metal fused into sculpture by orbital fire. But beneath it, the mine still held firm, the deeper vaults untouched. A few of the Vanguard survivors had begun setting up tents there, turning the ruins into a memorial site. Kael stood at the edge of the crater, wind tearing at his coat. A new monument rose behind him, carved from Nyxite and scrap alloy, a stylized sphere representing the core, wrapped in shattered Zevrak tendrils. Inscribed beneath it, for the lost, for the last, for the fire we lit. Eltarion read the inscription aloud beside him, voice quiet. Poetic. Did you write it? Kael shook his head. Nyra. She's not bad at this whole, symbolic gesture thing. She hates it, Kael said with a smirk. Eltarion smiled, then turned serious. You know it's not really over, right? He nodded. There'll be others. New tyrants. New empires. She glanced at him. So what do we do? Kael looked back at the crater. We make sure they remember what happens when you push people too far. Back at the temporary outpost, a gathering was forming, militia leaders, rogue captains, former enemies turned allies. The Vanguard had fractured, bled, and barely survived, but it had survived. And now it was becoming something else. A network. A warning system. A loose defense pact stretching across colonies and forgotten moons. Not a government. Not another version of EarthGov. A shield. At the center of it, Kael and Nyra. That night, Kael found her on the old ridge overlooking what used to be Block C, the housing zone that burned on day one. She was sitting on a crate, bottle in hand, staring at the stars. Her hair was wind-blown, and her eyes looked older than he remembered. You good? He asked. She didn't answer for a while. Then, I don't know how to be alive after something like that. Kael sat beside her. You figure it out. One scar at a time. They sat in silence for a long while. People want you to lead, she said. He nodded. I know. You going to? He didn't answer immediately. The wind howled low through the metal bones of the ruins. I think I've done enough leading, he said finally. Let someone else carry the torch for a while. She passed him the bottle. He drank, winced. Our stuff. What about you? He asked. She smiled faintly. Smuggling's boring now. Thinking of sticking around. Teaching some of these militia kids how to not blow themselves up. He raised the bottle in a mock toast. To retirement. To whatever comes next, she corrected. They drank. 3 months later, the Shrike flew again. Not as a warship. Not anymore. It became a courier, a scout, a symbol. People lit beacons when it passed overhead. Some called Kael the Ghost General. Others called him the Coreless. Most just called him the man who told the galaxy, no more. Nyra stayed with the ship, half captain, half legend in her own right. Eltarion went back to her archives, rewriting history books with first-hand experience. As for Kael, he never bonded with anything again. Never carried another weapon like the core. He didn't need to. The galaxy already knew his name. 1 year after the war, Kael stood alone on the edge of Eltarion's rebuilt outpost. Fields of solar mirrors now lined the horizon, powering a new civilian colony. Children ran where soldiers once died. The wind didn't smell like ash anymore. The stars were quiet. For now. He glanced at the sky. I know you're out there, he whispered. Whatever comes next, we'll be ready.